America is a country that was founded for the purpose of allowing Christians to do their duty before God and not to have their consciences ruled by the doctrines and commandments of men. Reese Fund exists in order to see the 10 Commandments properly applied, not just as a plaque on the wall, but to actually be used in business as though they're commandments from God that we're supposed to obey. Our goal is to find businesses and to buy them and to build them up. We want to find manufacturing businesses and use them to make sure that we can maintain our capacity to do things here. Reese Fund, Christian capital, boldly deployed.
I don't really like working.
I only work remotely.
I'm gonna need 8 weeks of paid vacation, maybe 12.
I take a lot of breaks. I feel more mentally healthy.
I'm gonna need a priority parking space.
Do you have non-dairy options in your coffee bar? Do you have soy? Do you have a decaf, half-calf kind of thing? Interviews are so boring.
How's your game?
Do I need to call my dad? You work for him, you know.
You guys are so intense. Like, do you always work this hard?
You don't run a daycare, you run a business. That's why you need redballoon.work.
I think you need me more than I need you.
Wanted. Young men to rebuild Western civilization. Must be unafraid of pain, blisters, intellectual rigor, and a lifetime of long shifts with swords and shovels, digging ditches, repelling invaders, and reading stacks of books taller than their fathers. Must be impervious to manipulative women of all sorts, giggling virgins, cyber skanks, and even full cauldrons of Karens or hand-wringing clergy, but always seeking to hear and heed the words of Lady Wisdom. Immune to the leadership of hypocrites and LARPing online masculinitods, unaffected by abusive authorities, petty professors, and all brokers of official respectability. Willing to hoist the Jolly Roger and Johnny Cash's favorite finger whenever faced with idolatry. Long-suffering joy and determination required. Must be willing to dwell among the tombs and graves of the long dead, seeking truths that cannot die. Exhaustion guaranteed. Conflict guaranteed. Mortality guaranteed. New St. Andrews College. Liberal arts for the undaunted.
Hey y'all, welcome to Cross Politic on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Have you downloaded the app? Have you checked out the whole network? Make sure you load the app to do that. Pastor Toby Talk Knox, I'm the water boy. It's good to have Knox back in the studio.
It's good
I know
to be
that.
back.
Yeah,
yes,
man.
absolutely.
Who are you?
Yes, exactly. I was trying to figure out who Gabe was earlier. But I'll tell you what's the messed up part. My seat.
Yeah.
Somebody's been sitting in my seat. My mic's all wrong. The system's all wrong.
I was gonna say, you don't look like Gabe at all.
No, thank God.
You look like you're in the right position. I don't like being there.
I don't like where my mic was. I had to readjust my camera. That's
Me and Toby are like fidgeting with the board constantly.
We've been messing with your stuff all
That's
week.
okay. It still sounds good. It's just not, where I wanted it.
Yeah,
I'll work on that.
Yeah. Hey, I got my new Fight Laugh Feast magazine.
Oh man.
Today. My son dropped it into my
It's
office.
the spring, summer, and fall editions.
School Wars.
Yep.
School Wars. I'm excited.
That's obviously the theme for the conference.
Yeah, that's our theme.
You got to show the Red Balloon ad.
No, I was going to bring it up. Because we're going to have to talk about that.
I think you should confront Andrew about it
let's
first.
we're going to have to look. You have to get the magazine to know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because
and then you can send an email to Andrew
I'm
at redballoon.work.
I want to know who the editor was.
Oh my
Say, what are you doing with that ad?
Yeah.
I don't want to be. It's at the end too. Like usually, you get a magazine. You're like, wow, this is so good. What is this?
Yeah.
It's frightening.
Yeah. Anyways, if you don't subscribe to the Fight Laugh Feast magazine, I don't know what's wrong with you, but go to crosspolitic.com, fightlaughfeast.com.
That's right.
Subscribe. Comes out 3 times a year. It's a big kind of book-like experience. Articles
even bigger
from,
now because we're doing 3 times a year. Yeah,
Ben Merkel, Robert Bortons, Gordon Wilson, Owen Anderson. I wrote an article. My son wrote a poem. Anyways,
and it's going to be like same title as our conference, right?
Oh man, and Make Singing and Choir Great Again by Jared Ritchie.
Ooh, all right.
Yeah, we're doing it.
The mission of Armored Republic is to honor Christ by equipping free men with tools of liberty necessary to preserve their God-given rights. In the Armored Republic, there's no king but Christ. We are free craftsmen, and body armor is a tool of liberty. We create tools of liberty. Free men must remain ever vigilant against tyranny. wherever it appears. God has given us the tools of liberty needed to defend the rights he bestowed upon us. Armed Republic is honored to offer you those tools. Visit them today at ar500armor.com. Again, that's the letters AR, the numbers 500armor.com, and get yourself some body armor. We're very grateful to have with us on the show today Sam Cooper. He's a Canadian investigative journalist.
Need some body armor after coming on the show. we might.
I think that's illegal in Canada.
Oh, it is. That's right.
I don't think you can have body armor in Canada.
I think it is.
I believe so.
That's how you know it's tyranny going on up there. He's a Canadian investigative journalist and best-selling author, renowned for his in-depth reporting on corruption, organized crime, and foreign interference in Canada. He earned a degree in history, philosophy, and English from the University of Toronto, followed by a journalism certificate from Langara College. Sam, thanks for coming on Cross Politic.
I'm really glad to be with you. Thank you.
Absolutely. So you just said a minute ago when we were getting started, you said this is like the Cuban Missile Crisis, only more sophisticated. And I was like, wait, hold on, pause. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, in journalism, the rule is follow the money. And that's what I've been doing my whole career. To wind a step back, I came up as a young reporter in Vancouver. This is a city that, you remember Miami Vice. So in the 1980s, the Latin cartels owned Miami and, hot cars rolling around. It looked good, but that was drug money.
Yeah.
So people see Canada as, a real kind of staid, well-ordered place, but it's wild. I was the person that broke open what is called the Vancouver model of money laundering. And essentially, to get right to the point, is this is 30 years of Chinese organized crime laundering drug money into Vancouver. This is a major Canadian city's economy, basically using the west coast of Canada to run. 20 years ago, it was heroin, ecstasy, and now in the past 10 years, it's fentanyl, which, as you know, is a very big deal in the United States. And so I am the one that really showed a lot of the world that Canada, especially Vancouver, has become a node for international drug trafficking, to the point where young families, I was very motivated. I was a young family man in Vancouver. People like me, good salaries, priced out of the city, literally had to leave that area of Canada. It's just the city is powered by drug money. So you're more close to the southern border. You see some of the action that goes around, the haciendas with, hundreds of millions stashed in them. This is happening in Canada. That's why I say that it is more sophisticated than the Cuban Missile Crisis. Because as you guys know, it's really popping off right now. We've got an economic war going on that very well could be the precursor, if you will, to a kinetic war. So I won't ramble on for too long. But
please do, though. Please do. No, just go.
You're losing us.
China has 17 ports in the Western Hemisphere. Some of them are on Mexico's west coast. This is where the precursors get flooded in. One is in Peru, where they have something called a Xi Jinping Belt and Road Project. This is how China, funds infrastructure and port deals around the world, a lot of Latin American countries, but these are military assets. So what I say is, America, a lot of the country, unfortunately, has been a little bit asleep at the wheel, but I lived right in a dark node of Chinese Communist Party infiltration through illicit finance and organized crime. And I just saw it in front of my eyes. And I believe, I'm not going to say that President Trump and his administration is necessarily doing the global tariff war well executed, but I am going to say there's a deeper military strategy underlying it. And it is, I assert that the Canadian economy and banks have been used essentially as financial tools by international organized crime, including, most importantly, Chinese Communist Party state-sponsored crime. That the key thing here is Canada's government has just very weak laws to counter organized crime. And that's why I say, China has a very sophisticated game going surrounding the United States. It's not an accident. Why would Vice President Vance be going up to Greenland? Why would Secretary of State Rubio be booting Chinese businessmen out of Panama? Look, I know because I covered those businessmen in Vancouver. They own a good portion of the city, and it's all connected to organized crime leveraged by China.
So when you broke this story, what happened? I mean, surely the Canadians, they sent the RMCP in and all the rest of it, right?
Look, I mean, it for me as a Canadian, I want to tell you, I feel close, like, brothers, family with Americans. I always have. So many people in my country feel the same way, but we have been very let down by our government that has let our military just atrophy. And look, due to you talked about risks. I've got some risks in my life because I'm writing about. I do a little bit of physical training with guys. A guy from it's called the JTF2. These are like Canadians Navy SEALs. Yeah, incredible team. But just like our military and our law enforcement are completely gutted, with no exaggeration. So the things that I've outlined, including the infiltration of organized crime, pricing good families out of cities, using Canadian banks, which at the end of the day are laundering fentanyl money for cartels that is killing Americans. Essentially, it's not a joke. The Canadian government is letting this happen. And that's part of why President Trump hit us and Mexico with tariffs, because as I say, to too large of a degree, Canada's system and Mexico's system is being used like a pincher action by China's Communist Party. It's complex stuff.
So you're saying though that you reported this
Vancouver.
You showed the receipts and you said, look, this is Chinese money, this is drug money, this is being laundering. Okay, yeah, there we go. Oh, and they did nothing.
They did nothing. That's a 2021 book called Willful Blindness, meaning that Canada's economic elite, political elite, government elite absolutely turned a blind eye to our regulated banks, regulated government casinos, guys, literally bags of cash being walked in. This is why I say Miami Vice, the 1980s. Vancouver is worse. And so, yeah, I blew the whistle on it. Willful Blindness. Guys, this book is, it launched as a bestseller in Canada. The government of Taiwan has bought a number of copies. It's being read in Washington. Wow. This is like the textbook on what China is trying to do, what we call hybrid warfare. And that is using financial systems and corruption. Basically, I mean, it's not a joke. I have read a Canadian government document that says Chinese crime essentially owns the country of Belize. So when you talk about being surrounded, that illustrates it. And to your point, look, I've outlined this, and in a certain very sad way, I can say that there are people in the Canadian government that don't appreciate me. I've faced certain threats, and there's definitely our current sitting government. I also have reported quite clearly is favored by Beijing, and that's a fact now. It was reported. Intelligence was disclosed in our current Canadian election, specifically because the government now has to disclose ongoing threats, because my reporting on China forced them to have an inquiry last year.
So it seems to me like James Coates was more of a threat than the Chinese party to Canada.
Right.
You know who James Coates? You know that reference is? The pastor that got locked up.
I missed it, brother. What's the reference?
He was one of the pastors that got arrested for having church during COVID.
During COVID.
Oh, during COVID? Yeah. I mean, look, you make a point there. I wasn't a supporter of that convoy, but very clearly the government, with their full financial regulatory might, cracked down on honest, regular people, seized their bank accounts, froze them. Meanwhile, I'll tell you guys point blank, because I have the information, I've come out straight and said, our sitting government is funded by people, some of them involved in fentanyl money laundering.
Right.
And, this is, again, why the U.S. government is not wrong to have a very sharp eye on our government. So you're right. There's a dichotomy between what our government cracks down on, and it reeks of corruption.
So, oh boy, I have a couple questions here. I kind of want to know when it started. And how long did it take before they actually have gotten their hands into everything? And then how much power do they have? But before we get there,
bring us up speed.
I want to know, let's just say for a second that we're in the boardroom and this is all the guys who are in China who are coming together to talk about their evil, wicked plan. Would you for a moment just walk me through how they actually express their plan to take over the world? At least starting with
that's
Canada.
A brilliant question, and I can contextualize it very nicely. Look, again, Secretary of State Rubio pointing at Panama and saying there's a guy named Li Ka-shing, which owns essentially the Panama Canal, or rather the ports. So again, Chinese military access. Yep. They want to get Li Ka-shing to sell because they don't want China to have that choke point. Now, the key thing here is Li Ka-shing, and my book reveals this, Li Ka-shing, prior to Hong Kong being handed back to communist China from Britain, Li Ka-shing and all the big businessmen in Hong Kong, they're bankers, they're casino owners, they're in finance, but what they really are they made their money in smuggling. They're the most elite organized crime in the world, literally look like bankers. And they met with the Chinese Communist Party. So it was Deng Xiaoping, the supreme, well, we call him the chairman, the ruler at the time. Right. And they said, look, we want you to help us do business with the world, you Hong Kong tycoon businessmen. If you do that, if you pave the way for our international trade, help us deal with the West, we will give you privileged access to the mainland China market, which, if you think about it, is the very same thing everyone on Wall Street and all the business persons in the world want. Mm-hmm. But the communists will not let you have that without, of course, the handcuffs. Right. And so to get to, the plan, literally, that's a key point of my book, that deal. Communist China is going to start spreading their influence around the world financially. The best hook, the devil's hook, we'll do it with money, right? Yeah. And so we'll use people like Li Ka-shing. And, that brings it home to me because, again, Li Ka-shing and elite Hong Kong business persons like him in the early mid-'80s buy major portions of Vancouver, that city where I came to grow up as a young reporter. And so what do when they start developing towers? They start running their money into the casinos. They start corrupting the local politicians. It's a strategic play. So organized crime is winning. The businessmen with, legal and illegal interests that are doing the bidding of Beijing, they're winning. And the deep play is the Communist Party supports their criminal and corrupt activity, trying to corrupt North American politicians, and also, of course, buying up, farms, resource assets. And if it's beside a critical infrastructure play, rather giving them visibility into, a port or something like that, all the better. So I think in a nutshell, that's the evil plan.
So Sam, I'm just trying to think through, why would China want to do this? I mean, obviously in the history of communism, it always wants to spread. Yeah. And it kind of needs to spread because it can't really exist. It starts to eat itself.
It's parasitic.
Starts to eat itself. So I guess that kind of makes sense that it wants to spread, but Canada, why would they even, give access to this? It doesn't make sense.
Strategic and feasible.
Strategic, feasible, and it's got the border with the leader of the free world and the most powerful military in the world. So again, Sun Tzu, the laws of Chinese military, the best general will win a war without firing a shot. They don't have the F-47 or F-35 or everything you have right now. They're stealing at the light of day to get that technology. But their plan has always been subtle infiltration. And they use something it's a Communist Party tool called the United Front. And they simply, they exert evil leverage over people that have left China in diaspora communities. They've come to the West for freedom, but in China's ideology, rather the communists, they call them children of the Yellow Emperor. And they assert that these people, this is the most racist ideology, owe blood loyalty to Beijing. And so you ask, why Canada? Again, number one, right on the doorstep of the people that they're trying to, at the end of the day, China, Beijing, and Washington are at loggerheads here. So there's that. But I mean, another thing is, you mentioned, the communism is a parasitic political ideology. People naturally want to live freely, even, of course, within mainland China. And should, our brothers and sisters should be free there, but the regime must protect itself. So anyone that goes abroad, whether sent abroad or naturally migrating, they will use the United Front to reach their tentacles into our societies and make sure that there are no critics against the Yellow Emperor, as Xi Jinping would call himself. So I won't ramble too long on this one, but you guys know the story of these Chinese police stations. They're set up in Texas. They're set up in New York. They're set up everywhere. This is the Communist Party extending its tentacles into diasporas.
Wait.
Take it back.
Where
you don't know about that?
No.
I don't know.
Texas.
I don't know about any of them.
Yeah.
What are these police stations?
Yeah, you act like we know stuff. We don't know stuff.
Okay, so any major city with especially with a sizable diaspora population, will have something that are called their official Chinese consulates. They're illegal. They're against the Geneva Convention. Countries cannot have, a state presence on foreign soil unless it's an official embassy, of course. But in corner stores, everywhere that I know of, the main cases, you can look this up in New York City, especially in, I believe it's Flushing, Queens. There's a very high population diaspora there, and they have unofficial Chinese police stations. So how it works is you will have a Chinese police officer set up, within mainland China, communicating with, local big businessmen in the community, Chinese community in New York, and they task them to spy on, surveil the community. And, they will even get them, in the most extreme cases, to help the Chinese police come in and rendition American citizens, force them to go back because they're being critical of, they could be Christian, they could be Falun Gong, they could be critics of the genocide in Xinjiang.
Right.
So this is how Beijing, using locals.
So what they're trying to do is they're trying to use these stations to really police their own people in America or in Canada. It's not
absolutely they're policing Americans. They're naturalized, Chinese Americans, Chinese Canadians.
Yes.
Those are the first ones that will face this monitoring, but they, through threats, and bribes, they will use them as proxies against your government in New York or in Texas. Anywhere there's a big city with that population, it's a very evil thing that these people are, threatened and leveraged into working for China. And the most critical ones that Beijing is afraid of being powerful voices of democracy and freedom, they will face the risk of being, and I'm going to blow your minds here in a second, they will face the risk of being renditioned to China. And guys, I just want to tell you this. I broke a story a week ago. You cannot get over this. There, in our current election, there's a member of the sitting government. So he's running for Prime Minister Mark Carney, Liberal Party. He told Chinese media in Toronto, he made the comment that his rival, who's running for the Conservative Party, who is a guy from Hong Kong, he's a Christian, he is a broadcaster who criticizes Beijing. And this guy, Hong Kong Canadian, faces a literal bounty on his head. China has placed an illegal bounty on his head because he's a voice of democracy. And here's the point. A member of Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberal government made the comment that this guy can be delivered to the Toronto consulate for that bounty. Can you imagine?
What?
I broke the story. The guy, this Liberal Party member had to step down, but this is the level of infiltration in Canada, our political system. And that explains that's what these Chinese police stations are about.
So when I was asking how much power do they have, you just answered that question. They have a lot of power because they're local. so they can actually get their hands on the people that they need to get their hands on in another country without having to send any military action.
They have military secret police power by using what it is. Very often they use local gangsters who are the ones, again, running pot farms across the United States is a known story now. Chinese crime, doing the money laundering of the fentanyl. I tell you, doing the efforts to corrupt American politicians. There's already cases in California we can point to.
Or Eric Swalwell sleeping around with Chinese spies.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there's more cases than that, but they use diaspora organized crime to run these thug stations for the Beijing police, secret police. That's what they are.
Man. Oh, my goodness.
Okay, so there's a couple things in here. Was there a massive mistake made with just giving up Hong Kong early and not thinking about that well? Could you walk through that a little bit, maybe how we should have played that? Because I don't think we saw this coming.
Yeah, I mean, the British, the West definitely took Beijing, took the Communist Party at its word. There was a legal deal that there will be 2 countries, 2 systems. So there will be rule of law in Hong Kong. And they still have Western judges there kind of putting like a false front on that actual system.
Right.
But what has happened and why this good Canadian that's running for office now and facing a bounty, Beijing came in and put in their national security laws a few years ago. And that means people like me, you ask the question, did we make a mistake? Yeah, I can't fly to Hong Kong. I've been advised not to fly to countries anywhere in Asia where Beijing has an extradition. So hell yeah, we made a big mistake giving back Hong Kong because that gave them another step towards attacking us kinetically. Yeah, for sure.
So are they taking over? Are they trying to take over like key economic industries like, oil in Calgary?
Yeah, no doubt. I know for a fact that, again, when I broke this story about Canadian government regulated casinos in Vancouver being laundered literally over $1 billion in drug cash in 1 year, a government inquiry had to be struck because of my reporting again, this time on the West Coast. The facts are proven, and my my sources that helped me break that story, so people with government visibility said, of course, these gangsters are buying, I'm not going to say they're the biggest oil patch investors in Calgary, but they're definitely buying resources. I broke these stories by sort of chasing down, we can just call them Chinese mafia lawyers working with, a local corrupt politician running around British Columbia looking for resource deals, looking for deep water, looking for port deals, looking for jade, looking for water. So yeah, they're trying to buy up, it's organized crime with the most powerful the most numerous foreign intelligence agency in the world is China. I don't think they're more powerful than American entities.
Do you guys have your own CIA there in Canada or FBI or something like that?
We do. And here's the key. Again, because I wrote this book in 2021 that really, from a journalistic perspective, gave tremendous, I would say, comprehension and visibility of this attack plan that's going on. People in Canada's version of the CIA, it's called CSIS, CSIA, Canadian Security Intelligence Service. They watched my work, and some of them had been doing investigations showing this type of deep infiltration into Canadian politics at the federal level. And people in various of those Canadian intelligence arms, police and intelligence, gave me information, including allowing me to look at documents to break these stories, which have led, they haven't done enough. We don't have any laws really to stop this, but the public knows what's going on. So in real time, I'll give you an example. As I said, this week, the story broke that China, it's a senior Chinese Communist Party intelligence agency that runs something called WeChat, or rather has access to, TikTok, WeChat. Mm-hmm. They were disseminating narratives promoting again, the Liberal Prime Minister, Mark Carney, showing very clearly that they hope that's their horse in the fight, whether the guy knows it or admits it or not. And as I've reported, Mark Carney has deep financial dealings with Beijing. So, yeah, we've got a CSIS. We've got a CIA, FBI, but they lack a lot of talented people. They lack laws and they lack support up high in the Canadian government, which again, I think Washington is concerned about.
So, okay, the reason I was asking, because I was wondering what type of resources you've had to be able to do this research. And I'm guessing that you don't have nearly as much as they have.
I got you know, some blessed with some good education, blessed with a lot of faith in my family. I like to say that my father is from the prairies, so you're familiar with, you know, good people in Canada. He was sent away to an extremely elite, you know, school in Switzerland, where some of, you know, the big families in Europe and Asia went there. My parents, his parents who were worldly, wanted him to be a big diplomat. He dropped it all and became a minister instead. But he gave me both. He gave me the worldly understanding and the faith understanding.
Yeah.
And so I'm just using what I've been given. And you know, I guess in Texas you call it like a bloodhound, or I'm able to chase stuff down. That's what I'm able to do.
So that's fascinating. So here's my question, because you know, it seems like you said we don't have the laws in order to be able to deal with this yet. At least Canada doesn't. But if they're coming in, if I understand this correctly, and forgive my ignorance, if they're coming in with businesses and then using organized crime and drugs in order to be able to capitalize on the financial aspect of this, wouldn't it be just simple to apply the law to where we have the most direct application to their effect of success?
Absolutely. But that's why my book is called Willful Blindness. If we really want to go deeper to your question at the start of this interview, look, in the 1960s, Pierre Trudeau, a very prominent Canadian prime minister, ran over to Beijing and sort of had a bit of we can call it, you know, an intellectual love affair with the communists. And there were a lot of people in the world at that time that wanted to open their minds to, you know, maybe there's another model to kind of balance capitalism, whatever. But Mr. Pierre Trudeau, who is the father of our just stepped down Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, there's been a succession, especially of these Liberal Party prime ministers that have been very open to both trade with Beijing. And I say, in one way or another, there's been a lot of corruption going on. And I do believe that is what has stopped Canada from updating modern, you know, effective laws on this stuff. Some of it is just, you know, China likes to make other countries rich with dirty money. They're doing it in the South Pacific to small islands where they want to be able to jump across, you know, so they can get, you know, first advantage on Hawaii or things like that.
Yeah.
That's what they use. And so if you're a governor, whether you're in, you know, Panama or Ottawa, unfortunately, as I said, people have a mistaken idea that Canada's being run as a very, very upright sort of advanced economy and democracy. But underneath, there's been rot going on for 30, 40 years with regards to China.
It just seems like, you know, as you're talking and you're describing this, I'm there's an old book called Witness by what's the guy's name?
I know.
Is it Chambers or something like that? Or
yes, I know. Yes.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Oswald Chambers.
Yes,
but it's a story of
the
this
Red Scare.
Yeah, it's a story of, like, I don't know, it's like
1920s,
1930s. I don't remember where it is. Maybe 1940s. This guy who was part of the Communist Party in the United States, and he breaks with the Communist Party, and it's, but like the way that they were seeking,
Whitaker Chambers. I knew it wasn't
there we go. I knew it was Chambers. Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking of, Pastor Toby.
But like you read that and you think, wow, that's crazy. And you see some of these old movies with, like, the communists and all the old. I grew up in the 80s, and all the bad guys were communists in the 80s. And then communism fell. Like the Berlin Wall came down, the Soviet Union fell apart, and I think there's been this like massive thinking like communism's gone, communism's dead.
It's not a threat.
It's not a threat, but you're talking like it's still going strong. Like the same old
Infiltration
plan is still being run by China.
Absolutely. The thing is, the Russians had a certain model of it, and they hadn't mastered money, which, as you know, is the way to get to the root of some problems. Money is a big double-edged sword, and the way to get Wall Street and the business people that have Wall Street or Bay Street in Toronto that have influence on our politicians to not crack down is to say, come on, we want access to that market in Shanghai. We want a teachable example here. Prime Minister Mark Carney and his, $1 trillion investment fund Brookfield have a $3 billion commercial real estate buy in Shanghai. And again, this is a story that I've written about. Mr. Carney got a $250 million loan in 2024 from the Bank of China while that Chinese market is crashing. So again, my point here is that, big Western businessmen are always going to want access to China, and that's the way China gets their hooks in. And I don't want to give the impression that Canada is saturated, Mexico is saturated, Panama saturated, Belize owned by Chinese crime. But America, as your former CIA director Pompeo said, I think a few years ago, he said China is inside our gates. So 100% America has the same problems. I just believe, you have much stronger laws and a lot more resources in terms of intelligence and law enforcement and military.
Okay, let's talk about that real second, because before you go, I want to talk about if America, because it sounds like it's going to be an uphill battle to try and make my head spin. The tariffs, every place that you named, that was one of the main points of tariffs was, okay, China, Canada, and Mexico. And part of it was to deal with the fentanyl. Now you're pulling this onion back, and this is way more important. What do you think the tariffs are going to do? And what do you think the plan of them is in this conversation? Because I believe our government has to be aware of this. The second part of this conversation is, if our government brought you in to say, what do we need to do based off of how you see the field and the strategy, what would you instruct Americans to be doing right now to head this off?
Right. I'll try to break that down in three parts. The first one is, again, in my book in 2021, I think I was one of the first ones to call the fentanyl thing the opium wars in reverse. Yeah. So China, they have a feeling of, they call it the 100 years of humiliation. It's Communist Party indoctrinated into everyone in that nation that the West won, the West dealt opium. They easily beat China. Now the shoe is on the other foot. And they literally, the American government now says that Chinese Communist Party members at the top own the fentanyl companies. I just broke a story, with US sources saying the American government intelligence and investigations know Chinese prisons are used to produce fentanyl. And they even, they give a value-added tax for their companies to ship fentanyl precursors abroad. And so at the end of the day, it sounds alarming, but the American government says Beijing wants to kill Americans and destabilize the country with fentanyl. So this is why people, for years within, law enforcement intelligence have been calling this is a hostile state activity. This is a kind of hybrid warfare. This is fighting America without missiles, and it's been working. And so the American government has said, we've been talking to you at the diplomatic State Department level, probably since about 2019, earlier, saying, we know you could stop the precursors if you wanted to. Please stop it. China isn't. So what do? I would do this myself if I was a general or a general president. Stop trading with them. This is what I always felt in Vancouver. If you're taking over our cities with drug cash, if you are killing our people with fentanyl deaths, why are we trading with you? So in a way, that's what the tariffs are doing. And, they even talked about this in congressional panels, I believe last fall. I covered it. They're saying, look, if China won't listen to us, we need to start looking at sanctions and trade action. So one, of course, you're going to slap, I believe, huge tariffs on China. You could say that is that's saying no more fentanyl. You're not going to use that hybrid weapon on us. And it goes further than that. if Canada and Mexico are being used as weak sort of backdoors or proxies, then yeah, they get the tariffs too. And I hate to say that as a Canadian, but I've been advocating we do the right thing years ago, and we're not in this boat with
That's right.
Mexico.
That's right.
That's right.
But the bigger picture here is, I mean, we got an economic war breaking out tonight. I mean, the Chinese yuan is getting, I believe it's getting weaker and weaker. Those tariffs are going up. The world markets are in chaos. But I and some others believe, at the very worst case, the U.S. government has intelligence that would suggest that China wants to attack Taiwan, within a year or two, if not sooner. So you need to hit them economically and disrupt them before they do it. I think that may be what's going on. I can't claim to know that, but it's a big military picture that's happening right now, I believe.
So do you think, I have a listener asking on our YouTube, he's asking, is the Conservative Party owned by China just as much as the Liberal Party is in Canada?
No, I mean, very confidently, I can say the Liberal Party, because they're in power about 70% of the time over this period where the infiltration is happening, they by far are most infiltrated. Literally, the intelligence now public says that China favors the Liberal leader. So clearly, the Liberal Party has sort of gotten in bed with the devil there, and things have gone sideways for our nation. But the Conservative Party certainly has its vulnerabilities to China, which is by far the biggest threat. This is not, this is not speculation. This is fact, documented. But there's also nations, Iran, India. The Conservative Party appears to have more vulnerabilities with regards to India, who you would think would be, our natural ally in North America. But they're also playing a complex game with some of the same things going on. So that what I want to leave you with here is, one, China, orders of magnitude, the greatest threat to Canada, and therefore, of course, the United States, and the Liberal Party, most compromised in Canada. And if I'm being honest here, look, as a journalist, I'm not a partisan, but the Liberals have been in power for 10 years, and they have just taken us further down that dark path with China. And all Canadians listening to this show, all Americans that can call their Canadian friends, we need a change of government. There's no bar, just that can't be debated.
One other question, just curious what your take is. One of the things we've been tracking with a little bit is actually the population implosion in a number of different places in the world. China has not been having replacement rate in their demographic growth for many years, and so there are sociologists predicting a massive population collapse in China and other nations as well. But I'm curious, have you? Does that factor in, or how does it factor into how you're thinking about maybe China's long-term ability to actually pull this off?
That's a great question. There are people that, China in my mind, they're getting more militarily powerful. They're putting all their eggs in that basket. Xi Jinping has every year he makes a promise that we're either going to take back Taiwan peacefully, and more it's not. We're going to use force, and we're going to fulfill the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. That's his promise to people in China. So he's expanding. He's at a race against time. They say 2027, I believe, is when the PLA will have its maybe 80 to 100 years anniversary. So that could be when they go in. They literally have documents that say they want to overtake the US as world leader by 2049. But you're right, their markets are crashing. They're a fragile growing power, if that makes sense, because they're very obviously, and it's no surprise in their history, they will throw their people under the bus to fulfill the objective of that very tiny, powerful elite. And so, interesting times and dangerous times.
Right. Wow, Man, that gave me a lot to think about. You got anything else? You want to hit them one more time?
No, I think people need to go. Tell us your book. You got more than one book out though, but you got some books. I want to know the content that you have out there and where can people find your content and read your articles and follow you.
Yeah, so I got the book called Willful Blindness, How a Network of Narcos, Tycoons, and CCP Agents Infiltrated the West. Willful Blindness, go on Amazon and that'll be your easiest way to buy it. Just Sam Cooper, Willful Blindness. It'll pop up. You'll be able to get that very easily in the States. And also the big one is, after the success of my book, I launched my personal investigative web platform. It's now getting, 1.3 million views on stories per month for pretty much,
Right.
I'm the founder. I bring in some contributors, but it's doing well. It's called thebureau.news. That's the URL. Just go thebureau.news. So same type of reporting. I'm trying to really do a lot more focused on America again, because this infiltration, is within America's borders. And as I say, at root, it's evil. People should not be living under communist threat in America. The one place in the world that they shouldn't, but they're making inroads. So it's got to stop.
Wow.
Thebureau.news. I just pulled it up. I'm gonna be coming back here. That's fantastic. Sam, thank you very much for joining us. Everybody needs to follow Sam. Look up thebureau.news. Thank you. Keep up the good work.
And Sam, whenever you want to come back on Cross Politics, you want to break something, feel free to let us know. We'd love to have you back on. Appreciate you.
Great. Love talking to you guys. Have a good night.
God bless.
Sam.
Bye.
Most real estate transactions happen at pivotal moments in life, both happy and sad, like a growing family or perhaps the loss of a loved one. At Story Real Estate, buying and selling homes isn't just closing deals. The folks over there know that it's a big life moment. Now, if you love serving people through these types of moments, Story Real Estate is looking for great people to join their team. So go to storyrealestate.com. That's storyrealestate.com. Click menu and then join our team to apply. You guys, do you guys believe? I mean,
I got a couple thoughts.
We live like the mafia is running Vancouver.
It's here in America.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is important.
Wow.
Why you need really morally upright legislators.
You mean guys who don't take a bribe? Like the Bible talks about? Yeah.
It's not just legislators. It's all
everybody.
All across.
Leaders. Well, I mean, just more, godly pastors, godly legislators, godly mayors.
Police officers.
Godly businessmen.
Yeah.
They don't have to go after the legislators first. They go after the businessmen first.
Because what's crazy is, the way I would maybe read some of these tea leaves is probably a lot of these politicians don't like communism, but they start seeing paychecks or influence or power.
Like,
and it's like, all right, I'll do it. I'll follow you.
They like money.
Go ahead, Gabe. I'll let you finish. Okay, so here's something I was thinking about as Mr. Cooper was talking. By the way, Gabe, we have to get him back on again. I think there's a lot more to this.
100%.
But, when you don't deal with crimes and you don't deal with sin, then you create a culture that allows it to fester and develop some sort of new kind of disease, a virus that becomes something that you don't have an immune system to deal with because it's already been inoculated in your system. And when you can come in through businessmen and then start running crime syndicates through this, and they already know it's comfortable. It's like, well, what's our profit loss margins? We're probably going to lose 15%, but we'll gain, roughly, 75% here, 85. Okay, we're good. We're good. And because you don't punish crime, when you start punishing crime and you start make people pay restitution and you kill people who do murder, all of a sudden it makes everybody say, well, that's not the way in.
Start acting right.
But we let so much of it fester in our own culture. They're like, oh, there goes the back door. Like this, I agree with them. There's probably laws that they're trying to find their ways around, but we have a lot of the laws.
Kicked off TikTok for live streaming.
Yeah, of course we did.
Just now.
Because we're talking about China. Well, sorry. There it goes.
That's great.
Well, live streaming on TikTok.
But this is my point.
Just got kicked off.
This is my point.
For misinformation.
They know how to police their own ranks well.
Wow.
And if we would do this, we would probably solve 90% of this problem. But we don't.
Right. Well, corruption opens you up.
compromised man.
Yeah.
Well, and the same guys that are, let's say, trying to bring justice to, some law that was broken are the same guys that are being bought off by China or sleeping around with Chinese spies, or our justice system is full of hypocrisy.
Right.
It's full of men and women doing the very same thing that they're trying to bring justice over here to.
Right.
I think part of it too is like, so we have real governments that can handle a lot of this, but we don't think about them that way. We think about one government handling this, and that's the civil magistrate. But when you have somebody who's sleeping around with a spy and the church says this person right here is under church discipline, and it's actually a real government with real authority, all the other governments say, wait a second, the immune system is kicked in. Why do we have, well, let's test the rest of this guy. What else has he got going on? And they act in, but then you have a society that says we will not tolerate this. We will not tolerate on a social level. We will not tolerate in our communities. It's a real government. It has real authority to do real things. You have the family government. We don't we don't think about our families running away. We're like, I'm sorry, family meeting. This person is kind of on the outs. We're exercising a form of discipline in the family. We're going to have to deal with them. They're outside of the family now.
Right.
And this is what it looks like.
That's a really good point, Knox, because one of the things that Sam was talking about is like, he's like kind of powerless to do anything because the only government they have
is one government.
There's one government. There's no checks and balances on this. But like in God's system, the way that God has established power and authority in the world, he's given authority not only to civil magistrates to punish evildoers, but he's given the keys of the kingdom to the church, to pastors and elders who can admit and exclude from the kingdom, from the church. And they have also the authority of their teaching ministry of saying, thus says the Lord, you may not do that. That's
What if you could join a network of business leaders who share your Christian values, who reject the separation of faith and business, and who have a fierce vision for success? Welcome to Business Makers Network, a network that strives to create community, build intellectual wealth and practical business knowledge, and grow thriving businesses for the kingdom. We're not just another business network. We are a community of unapologetic Christian leaders who understand that success in business blesses our customers, blesses our families and employees, and in the end drives greater profits. All of Christ for all our business efforts as we aim to take the talents God has given us and turn them into 30, 60, and 100-fold. With a combined net worth already exceeding $1 billion in committed memberships, our members are reshaping the business landscape while staying true to our Christian values and taking dominion in the lanes God has paid for us. As a member, you'll gain exclusive access to our Business Makers Network app, discounts to live workshop events, network calls with key influencers, access to like-minded Christian business leaders, a pool of hands-on intellectual wealth and practical business knowledge, mentorship and menteeship programs. We will be rolling those out over the coming year. read-only access for the tier above you for educational purposes, invitations to our annual corporate partner dinner, networking events at the Fight Laugh Feast conference. We offer membership tiers designed to match your business journey. From our exclusive double diamond level for industry titans, to our green membership for promising startups, to our MVP tier that is looking for a community of Christian, like-minded business leaders. There's a place for every serious business leader in our community. Your network is your net worth. Join Business Makers today and become a part of a movement that is changing the face of Christian business leadership. Visit our website now to secure your membership and step into a community where faith, business, and success